their income, and the prices they face. Okay, so coffee, donuts, budget constraint. You know, then the consumer has some indifference curve. Say like this. Call it U1. Yeah. Can the consumer choose this bundle?
No.
No, it's infeasible. They can't afford it. Yeah. Can they afford this bundle?
Yes.
Yes. Which one do they like better?
One on the right. They can't afford it. Or no, the same.
They're the same, right?
Yeah.
Trick question. They're on the same indifference curve. Yeah.
Yes.
So they can't afford this one, but they can afford this one, and this one's just as good. Yeah. It makes them exactly as happy. Yeah.
Can we shift the indifference curve out?
Yeah. So we might be like, well, should the consumer choose this bundle or choose this bundle? They can afford them. Yeah. And the answer is like, no. They could do better, right? They could afford all these, but they could do even better than indifference curve U1. They could move to say, just bear with me that I'll do a few of them. They could go to indifference curve U2, which is preferable to indifference curve U1. It's further from the origin. It's got more coffee and more donuts. Yeah. Okay. Now U2 has many more bundles that are unaffordable, right? And relatively few that are affordable. But who cares, right? You only need one on the same indifference curve. You're indifferent. They all make you equally happy. Yeah. And so what the consumer will do, like the optimization process, is to move further out and further out and further out, go out to the farthest out indifference curve that you can get to, while still being able to afford it, right? That is, while still being within the budget constraint. Yeah. So the way we'll draw it, maybe I'll change colors because this is so, such a huge deal. They'll get out to the point where the indifference curve is like just barely touching the budget constraint. Yeah, call it U3. On U3, the vast majority, all but one of the bundles are unaffordable, right? But there is one that's affordable. It's this one, right? And that's the one they'll choose. Yeah, and it's a unique bundle. It's saying it's a very specific thing. It's like, I will choose D-star donuts and C-star coffees. And there's no alternative combination, no alternative bundle of coffee and donuts that I can afford, which would make me happier. Yeah, it's a utility maximizing bundle. Much like in the tedious numerical example on Tuesday, it was like we did all the logic and we iterated through and we said, oh, I should buy 4 tacos and 2 Cokes or whatever it was, right? It was like a specific answer.
What's the name of the linear line? Is that income or budget or what?
Budget constraint, yeah. And it incorporates both income and prices, yeah. Yeah, budget constraints are about what you can afford, and indifference curves are about what you like. And your decision of what to consume has to account for both. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first kind of big thing. Yeah. This is what the consumer will choose. It's a unique utility maximizing bundle. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a little algebra. Using the things that we built up before. Oh, because what's true at this point about the slopes of the indifference curve and the budget constraint?
They're equal.
They're the same. Yeah. I hope that's somewhat obvious, right? Yeah. I don't know if I have like an explanation for why exactly, but this is just kissing that. If it's just tangent to it, then they have to have the same slope at that point. You can start to see where calculus, gets handy here, right? Even though it's not in our toolbox. Okay, so let's go from that point. The fact that the budget constraint and the indifference curve have the same slope at the utility maximizing bundle. Yeah, and then we'll write out some things that are kind of neat. Okay, so recall from a second ago that the slope of the indifference curve, right, was the marginal utility of donuts divided by the marginal utility of coffee. Yeah. And recall also that the slope of the budget constraint, yeah, was the price of donuts divided by the price of coffee. Yeah. Add a utility maximizing bundle, right? I'll write that. Add a utility maximizing bundle. These two things have to be equal. Sheesh. Right. That's the logic of this diagram. Okay, so if this is equal to this, I can do some rearranging and something extremely exciting will happen. So let's do that. What do I want to do? It's just like cross multiply. So I'll multiply both sides by the marginal utility of C, and I'll multiply both sides by the price of C. Yeah. I'll end up with the marginal utility of donuts times the price of coffee has to equal the price of donuts times the marginal utility of coffee, which doesn't seem that interesting. Then I'll next divide both sides by the price of coffee and the price of donuts. Yeah. So then I'll end up with the marginal utility of donuts divided by the price of donuts is equal to the marginal utility of coffee divided by the price of coffee. Yeah. And this has to be true at an optimal point, right? At the utility maximizing choice. Does this look familiar? Not really. This was the thing we did last time, right? We're saying the consumer should always choose if they're kind of iteratively reasoning, what should I buy next? They should always choose the good that gives them the most bang for the buck, right? That gives them the highest marginal utility per dollar spent. And if they keep doing that, they'll eventually come to where they run out of money. And at that point, we saw last time, I think it was like 10 or something, that the marginal utility per dollar spent on tacos was exactly equal to the marginal utility per dollar spent on Cokes. Yeah? And this is a formalization of that, right? It's a different kind of reasoning or whatever. The graphs look different, but it gets you to the exact same logical conclusion, right? Which is that at an optimum, the marginal utility you're getting per dollar spent on all the different goods you're buying have to be the same. Yeah? Just like last time, if this wasn't true, right? If the marginal utility per dollar spent on donuts was greater than the marginal utility per dollar spent on coffee, well, you should allocate $1 away from coffee, which would make you sad because you'd get less coffee, and you'd allocate it towards donuts, which would make you happy because you'd get more donuts. And the point is, if the marginal utility per dollar spent on donuts was more than the marginal utility per dollar spent on coffee, the gain from buying an extra donut or spending an extra $1 on donuts would be greater than the loss of spending $1 less on coffee. Yeah? So if they weren't equal, it couldn't be an optimum, because then you could just reallocate across the two goods. There would be an arbitrage opportunity, right? You could reallocate across the two goods and be happier, even though the prices didn't change and your income didn't change and your preferences didn't change. You just, it's just like free happiness that you'd be leaving lying on the ground. Yeah. So this has to be true at an optimum. Yeah. For the same reasons as before. That was cool, huh? No? Okay. No, you don't do it. See if we're still doing good here. I think so. It's a very long video. I hope the phone has enough memory. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. This little fact is like one you will use on your problem set. Okay. And this is all in your textbook too, in the appendix to chapter 10. And like I said, I think this material is maybe more than slightly harder than stuff we've done before. So if you've been skating by, not reading your textbook, This might be a week where you read your textbook. Yeah, I'm mostly talking to the camera. I'm sure you guys have been reading your textbook. Okay, so let's use our model to analyze a few things. Yeah, and all sorts of interesting things will ensue. Okay, the first thing the model only has 3 components, right? It's got prices, it's got incomes, it's got preferences, yeah? And so, any kind of interesting analysis is going to be like, well, tweak one of those things and see what happens, yeah? So first let's tweak income, which is maybe the least important, but it's a good starting place, and some interesting things happen. So, you got coffee, donuts, you've got some budget constraint, you've got some indifference curve that is just tangent to the budget constraint, then you've got some utility maximizing bundle, C star 1, D star 1, that is, the point, the bundle at which the indifference curve is tangent to the budget constraint, and then let's say, the consumer gets,